Good afternoon, everyone, and let me thank you for joining us here this afternoon for a quick press briefing. Um, a number of things happened in the last week while I was on the non-deal roadshow with the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank, and I felt that it was important not only just to speak but also to update, because as happens very often, things are happening without people not necessarily being fully aware. Let me say at the outset that I was horrified and indeed upset, just like Barbadians, in hearing of the incident that took place first against the lady in the country who was raped and her grandson tied up. Equally, the other attack against a man who I actually know well, whose car was hijacked at gunpoint. And these types of incidents will, of course, lead to people having not just anger and frustration, but regrettably anxiety at best and panic at worst. And it is therefore important that on an island this small, that we recognize more than ever that this is the responsibility of all of us, and that what is required of us is simply a whole of nation approach. I say so, and there's a lot of wind we expect these few days, so Beijing should prepare for that. But I say so conscious that we've started the process of conversations, but we are going to continue them at pace. And this is a time when we cannot be on the sidelines, nor can we be expecting that a sprint is going to solve these problems. The reality is that the nature of the concerns that we've had this year has changed. We've had 22 homicides for the year, but 13 of them have been guns. The rest of them, 9, have been knives, which tells you, and when you look at what happened with respect to them, the issue is not simply a gang issue. The issue is one of how we manage anger, how we resolve conflict, and how indeed we deal with issues of dishonesty, whether it be in outright stealing or aspects of corruption. And this is going to require all of us to act together. In acting together, there will be moments of discomfort. And let me say at the outset that I am satisfied, and we had a Security Council meeting yesterday, there is another one on Monday, that the police and the other law enforcement agencies are in fact executing a robust plan with the appropriate equipment and with the appropriate skills available to them to contain and fight the crime. Indeed, I think the Attorney General has advised me that at least 3/4 of the incidents from this year, the police have been able to get on top and charge persons with it. I perhaps would wish that they would be a little more comprehensive in their communication with the public, and in the same way that they have Monday Wanted, that they should perhaps be also communicating with the public on a weekly basis, letting the public know when they have reaped success and when they have been able to contain situations as a result of the excellent work that they have done on the ground in communities. Now, at the same time, there have been a suite of law enforcement and criminal justice measures that we have put in place, and many of them are in fact working. And we will continue to put and bring other pieces of legislation. And the ones today that I am referring to specifically, we would have spoken previously to you that a consultative process on wireless intercept legislation and being able to use the intercepts as evidence in a law court is something that we would wish to pursue. There are different types of that legislation in the Caribbean, and indeed that draft was passed to the Advisory Council on Citizenship Security, chaired by Professor Newton. The subcommittee that has reviewed the legislation has finished their work. We are aware of that, and it has now to go to the full council. And once that is received by us through the Office of the Attorney General, the Cabinet and the Parliament will take the necessary steps to introduce that legislation, conscious that in many instances intel is available But if you can't use that intel as evidence, there is then a lacuna, a break between what you can carry to court and what you know. And the government has determined that we cannot continue to have that situation obtained, and therefore we want to bridge the gap with the passage of the legislation. Once we get it back from that advisory council, that will move with dispatch. There are other pieces that they are reviewing, but at the same time, that is the most important one for us. The second most important thing is that we have come, we believe, close to the end, and we will now be setting a timeline with the issue of truth verification testing. There has been extensive discussions led by the Honorable Attorney General and my permanent secretary, who is the Secretary to the National Security Council, with the workers, and with, in fact, thank you, with the workers' representatives, the unions, and it will also impact on private sector persons. And why? The truth verification testing is not focusing on any category of worker, it's focusing on persons who have access to certain secure spaces. And if you have access to certain secure spaces, then we need to ensure that you are acting with the integrity that we need you to act with, such that the rest of the society is not put at risk. The truth verification testing, therefore, is a fancy set of words, effectively for what? A lie detector test? A lie detector test. And therefore, it will be subjecting both public and private sector persons. We accept that persons cannot be forced in certain circumstances to do it, and therefore, if they can't work, they won't have access to those areas and may have to be placed in other jobs. But the AG will continue those discussions and set a timeline. We have also, on a parallel track, taken the time to build up the capacity, because you can't say that you're going to do truth verification testing and you don't have the people or the equipment to do it. And we have taken the time over the course of the last year to do the training, to get the equipment, and we are at a stage now ready to execute. And I expect, therefore, that the AG will be meeting with the unions in the next week, 10 days, to be able to set the timelines for that to become live. In addition to that, my friends, we have also recognized, and today Cabinet extended for another year, but on deeper and broader terms, the collaboration between the Barbados Defense Force and the Barbados Police Service. Typically, there have been joint operations, as Barbadians know. You most know it and see it on Kadooment Day, when the BDF is out in support. But you know, we've done joint tourism patrol engagements. We've also dealt with counter-drug operations, particularly in the waters, in the oceans. But we are broadening it to include other serious matters of serious concern to the country, to ensure that the Barbados Police Service has the fullest possible support. We have also indicated that the services, the specialist services, particularly on financial crime, that are available from the regional security system must be utilized. That is where we, as a member of the RSS, have invested in building up specialty skills. And at the same time, I would have indicated when I visited with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom at 10 Downing Street some time ago, we have agreed that the British will work with us through the identification of persons to do training in situ. We currently have 2 senior Barbados police officers who have been on long-term training in the United Kingdom, with another 2 to go off very shortly before the end of the year. But we took a decision that simply sending elements of the High Command alone will not be sufficient. And therefore, what we want to have is comprehensive training in situ as far as possible on site, so as many officers can continue to benefit from the increased skills and enhanced skills that we need. We are comfortable with the work that is being done by the new Serious Organized Crime Unit and also by the new Anti-Corruption and Counter-Terrorism Unit that was established. Believe you me, there is not everything that is being done that we can share with you. What I will share with you, however, is that the government will be doubling down on getting the whole of nation approach. And we will be doubling down on it starting next week We meet again with the social partnership in full. And let me remind you, every time that we have chosen to come together to fight a problem, however difficult the problem is, whether it was, as I said, with the economic situation when we first came to office, it's ironic that at the end of this month we come out of the IMF program formally, and it is also ironic that at this time I received information last week that the lowest ever unemployment rate in the history of Barbados was at the end of March of this year, when our unemployment went to 6.3%. That does not mean that I'm satisfied with us overcoming the problem of underemployment, and the government is setting itself now to deal with the issues of underemployment. But I make that point to be able to drive home that even as we speak, and we have achieved these things by working together, it must give us comfort now that we can also wrestle down other problems. When COVID came, we took the same approach. And it is not only the social partnership that we are going to, but we will have a series of meetings over the next few weeks with almost every sphere of civil society and the church. Indeed, I hope that week after next week, a week from Monday, we will meet with the full Council on Citizens Security again. We will also be seeking to meet with the media managers. We will meet with the church. We will meet with civil society groupings. And we are meeting with them not just to brief them, but to hear specifically how they intend to be able to participate both in the short term and in the medium to long term. Up to yesterday, the Honorable Attorney General and the Senior Minister for Health, many of you are aware that mission number 4 in our 6 missions to 2030 is about improving the quality of public health, individual health, as well as reducing the crime and reducing the crime and boosting safety issues by 50%. And those mission boards yesterday met, and the AG at some point can perhaps brief us, so that consultative process started already, but will continue under my leadership next week, Wednesday, with the social partnership and with the other groupings. We already know, for example, that the Advisory Council on Citizenship Security has expressed, particularly at the instance of the head of the private sector and the Chief Education Officer, the concerns with respect to those children who are being superannuated from the school system. And the country will have to have a national discussion about the extension of the school age from 16 to 18 or 17, depending on what the country is comfortable with. I know what my own views are. But similarly, we will also ensure that rather than children being put out of school with nowhere to go, that we develop a program that allows them to be taken out of that individual school system if they are given trouble, and be able to be subject to a rigorous program involving the Barbados Defence Force and the Barbados Youth Advance Corps, recognizing that if you don't deal with the problem at this stage, you're going to deal with it at another stage. During the last few weeks, I had cause to say that the government cannot go into people's houses and say, send your child to Sunday school. But I have said it now sufficient times, including within the context of the leadership of my own political institution, and have said that this must be a project undertaken by us as a political institution. We have not come only to represent people in circumstances where it is just simply about talk. We have to ensure that in our own house, in our own families, that children are getting the groundings and the rooting. As I said, weapons don't kill people, you know. It's people as kill people. It's people as kill people. So that if we don't have people understanding how to manage anger, how to deal with mental problems, and this week the Deputy Prime Minister spoke at a session that Ministry of Health and PAHO had on mental health issues, showing that since COVID, we've had a significant increase in mental health issues in this country. The Minister of Home Affairs, the National Council for Substance Abuse, has been told they have to become more active. How many parents out there know what a Molly looks like? How many parents out there know what purple drank looks like? How many parents know that people are using cough syrup as a way to be able to get high and to do foolishness? And therefore, we have said that I need to see the National Council of Substance Abuse out there in communities, not just on social media, but actually in supermarkets, in communities, so that people can be shown and understand this is what to look for. Because if the fight is going to be across the board, then it means that we have to equip people with the knowledge. So that, as I keep saying, the criminal justice reform is coming at pace after the national consultations that we had. The plea bargaining legislation is there. The jury alone trials are there. Those things are there. The police strengthening, there has been no occasion in 7 years that we have not given the Barbados Police Service exactly everything that they have asked for and needed, from equipment to technology to even pulling out the detectives last year, as I did in the budget, to ensure that those who were being paid less than those in uniform would not be incentivized to go back into uniform in order to deal with these issues. Those things are being dealt with. What I'm dealing with the next few weeks now is us. And I want to appeal to the opposition. You were given a chance to come on the Citizen Advisory Council. Fine, you don't want to do that. But I'm asking the opposition to meet with a team of cabinet next week as well, because they cannot simply be on the sidelines of this effort to fight crime. I'm not asking them to necessarily come up or share what they want to put in their manifesto, although I don't know how we can have a whole of nation approach without everybody buying into this. This is too critical for the country. I am not standing on ceremony. I am not saying that I've been scorned once, twice, 3 times, and therefore I'm not talking to them. Luckily, as a lady, I know how to be scorned many times, and therefore I remain focused on what is the national issue at hand. Secondly, I want to ensure that, as I said, even as we share as a government, we want to hear specifically from people, what will you do in the short term, in the long term, to be able to help us lift this heavy weight and to make sure that this small, beautiful country of ours does not have people frightened to walk the road or frightened to do things. I hear you, I feel you, and as I said, I was very, very clear that this cannot continue. And to that extent, I bring the weight of my office to be able to lead this mobilization effort across everybody to ensure that we are going to lift weight as a people together. Will we be successful? I don't have a crystal ball, but I can certainly tell you that we are going to work every day, and we're going to ask Bajans to lift the weight every day. And if at the end of the day we have done our best and our best is still not enough, that's life. But I know deep down that if we start lifting and doing our best, I know we are going to start to see results. And that is why I said that that will be separate, and I do this because I fear that when we speak in this way, the opposition is going, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about that, or you talked too much on this. This is not that type of moment anymore. And I want to address the issue of tint because, trust me, a political party and a government doesn't like to do what is unpopular. So that if this was simply about popularity, we would not be going down this road. But when the police, the people who protect us, come to us and say, Prime Minister, members of the Security Council, we need this measure introduced. We're not asking for you to remove all tint, but we're asking for you to regulate the tint. And there are a number of reasons. And the first reason is that if that officer who has to go to that particular car, and we saw it, there was a shooting on Broad Street with a car and the police within the last month or two, wasn't there? If that particular officer or officers have to approach a car, it is all black tint. They don't know what they're facing. They don't know whether they're underreacting overreacting, whether their life is in their hand, whether they will be standing. That is the reality of what we are facing, and there are two elements in our society that cause that panic. One is the tint, and the other is people walking with masks and hoodies so that you cannot identify who it is that's walking on the street and who it is that might be attacking you. These are the two things that will enhance the risk that the police face in doing their job. These are the people who protect us. And while I would like to be able to say that we can not cause everybody an inconvenience, when I put the inconvenience to the individual in the scales against the risk to the life of the handful of people who we have protecting us every day and every night, I don't need to tell you where the scales are landing. And therefore, I say to you that if we are going to change, it's no different from if we are sick. If you are sick and you need to get better, you are going to have some pain. The surgeon next to me will tell you that you're going to feel pain before you start to recuperate. And in those circumstances, if we are going to get the country better, then there will be inconveniences to people. There are people who do not want to do TVT in secure areas, but we're going to have to do it if only to protect the country. We have bought the scanners and machines. Sometimes the parts break down. We're trying to build in more redundancy, but we have to have a comprehensive approach to these matters. And at the same time, as I said, we will continue to complete the other reforms that both the police and the law courts are asking for. There's one other issue that I'd like to address because it bothers me. This government has been very liberal in allowing people to march, in allowing people to say all kinds of things. We let the ball pass outside the off stump all the time. Every 2 Saturdays you have what? 200-300 people marching? Full democratic rights. But what I have noticed, I went to Dominica 2 weeks ago only to be told that persons went down there before me to follow me down there. Then to be told that, because I don't listen to it, that comments were being made about cockroaches in Parliament. Now, why does that bother me? I don't mind people calling me Miss Piggy and all the other things that they call. But when you start to up the rhetoric with the animus and the vitriol that is there, the last time people referred to people as cockroaches, it led to genocide in Rwanda. And some of you in the media should go and do the research to remind people of what happened there. It is not acceptable in our democracy. And if you are going to go follow me down, you can curse me as much as you want. But when you start to curse Barbados and Bajan soldiers and Bajans, then we start to also have another problem. I am saying to us, please, last week, Saturday, I believe it was, AG, DPM in Colombia, a presidential candidate was shot in his head. The first thing that the Secretary of State from the US said was what? Lower the rhetoric. Lower the political rhetoric. Lower the animus. I am saying to those who believe that they want to take this government out, by all means, that is your right. By all means, canvass. By all means, comment and argue. But when you start to use language that is fueled with animus and vitriol, referring, it wasn't even a joke because Bajans sometimes can be very harsh to each other and call somebody a name. But when you start to quote it with that kind of animus and vitriol, we are walking a dangerous, dangerous point. And it may not even be the person who is speaking who may themselves be involved in anything, but their comments and actions may lead to somebody who may be mentally unstable doing something that we will all as a nation come to regret. This country is a small country. We do not have a lot of room for error. We do not have a big buffer. I just came off the road last week. It was a successful non-deal roadshow. People were very impressed with where Barbados has gone. The confidence in this country is high. But the one thing that will kill us all is what? The extent to which we start to implode on each other because of crime. And I know when I look at the figures and when I receive the briefings from the police, believe you me, this is no more than a handful of people in Barbados playing the fool. And a handful cannot trump the majority of citizens acting together in the same way that COVID-19 could not push us down. We lost lives in COVID-19. Regrettably, we are losing lives with this crime situation. But we can win the battle. We can win the war, I should say, if we work together. And that is why, in the public, I have no problem in saying to the leader of the opposition and the Democratic Labour Party, come and sit down at the table and let us reason, not for the sake of you or me, but for the sake of all Barbadians. A letter will go off asking for a formal meeting either next week or week after, but I am urging all Barbadians who have influence on them too to say now is the time for all right-thinking Barbadians over the next few weeks to come together. This is crop over. And the last thing any of us want is any major destabilization at crop over, because like with the Prime Minister's cut and with certain things will then have actions lead to consequences. And we are not at any stage going to put the people of Barbados at risk. And I say simply, when you see action being undertaken in a robust manner by the police and by those in charge of other aspects of law enforcement, do not be surprised. I'm sure that they know that they will not cross the line in any way that is disproportionate. But we have to be able to restore order in this country. I was entirely impressed, and I want to thank Senator Drakes yesterday for her speech in the Senate. I thought it was mature. I thought it was compassionate. I thought it was clear. I thought it was fair. And to that extent, I'm saying to each of us, now is the time not for talk, but for action. And we will lead the effort, and I will do it not by asking anybody to do the heavy lifting. I will be there up front with the Attorney General, with the other Deputy Prime Minister and the senior ministers, and with other agencies, but working with civil society, communities, families, and indeed, the social partnership themselves, helping us to lift the heavy weight. And of course, anchored, I hope, by all of the religious institutions. I said the church, but I'm talking also about the mosques, the temples, everybody. If ever there was a time for Barbadians to come together and to say, no, this is not where we are going, it is now. So I'll pause at this point. I've announced a number of measures that will take place separate from those consultations, with the AG bringing to a closure the TVT, truth verification testing. And of course, as I said, I hope we will get back the legislation for the wireless intercept so that before Parliament rises for its summer recess, that we can have that legislation passed through to even further strengthen the hands of the prosecutors and the others. I should have said also that the George Barr Declaration, which was settled in Georgetown in November, George Bridge Declaration, sorry, which was settled in November last year, and appointed the high-level representative of CARICOM, Mr. Godfrey Smith, former Attorney General of Belize, has been working, and in fact, as we speak now, he's meeting with the British in the UK, from the Prime Minister right back down. And I really do want to salute the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who, as a former Director of Public Prosecutions, has been very sensitive to these issues and is more than happy to work with us in the Caribbean community. Because as bad as we may think our problems in Barbados, the truth is that we are at the very, very low end of the spectrum. But what we see is enough to cause us concern and to motivate us into urgent action. So I'll open for any questions. Thank you. Anything left out? Any questions?
Yes, madam.
Use the microphone. Please forgive my stuffiness.
You are most forgiven, Madam PM. I have the same stuffiness as well, too.
Yeah, I think it's the Sahara dust, but the problem is when it goes into the chest, like it
Yeah.
has with mine.
Madam PM, as it relates to the truth verification, I know when that first was broached, there was some pushback from the unions. Are you satisfied that whatever changes or the discussion would have been enough to satisfy those concerns raised by the unions back then?
I think you will ultimately have to ask them that, but I can say that the Attorney General and the team have done extensive public education. There has been some modification to some of the things that we're doing. I believe that even before you get to TVT, there's what what do you call it? iDetect, which is an initial screening. And as I said, we can't force anybody into doing something, but we know we can make conditions for access. You want to access this area of a port, this area of the airport, these are the conditions under which you can access it. If you can't meet that, then the government will have to find somewhere else for you to operate and work. And we have reached that point. And we will be moving with dispatch. I'm not going to prejudge anything. As I said, let the Attorney General meet and conclude the discussions after extensive public education. AG, is there anything you want to add?
As urgent as this is in helping us to weed out corruption and helping us to keep guns and drugs and so on from coming in, we've still taken the trouble to meet with not just the unions. We've also met with all of the agencies that are going to be that are going to have to feel the discomfort really of being tested in this way. So we've met with the airport, we've met with the post office, we've met with the prison service, customs, because we want to bring people along with us. Some countries in the Caribbean have chosen to legislate this, but the Prime Minister has made it clear from the outset that we want to bring people along with us. So when you ask the question whether the pushback has softened, from my consultations with them, I think that to a significant degree it has softened. We spent a lot of time in the last 6 months or so ironing out what are called standard operating procedures, and the unions have made their input on those documents. We've made ours, and I think that we are now in a place where we've actually settled the text of the standard operating procedures. We wouldn't have got that far if the pushback had continued to be at the same level. So we've made significant progress, and I think we'll be on course to, as the PM says, a soon implementation.
Final question from me, Madam PM. I know that it is not your style to be reactionary, and the couple of incidents that we have had, though 3 or so too many, because one is one too many as it relates to the elderly. Is there a need for greater protections of some kind for the most vulnerable, the elderly, etc., in light of what we are seeing?
That's always the case. And look, we are bringing legislation soon. Minister Humphrey has legislation looking at senior citizens, and this goes beyond crime now. This goes to abuse, this goes to exploitation. These are all things that we know take place regrettably in the community as we seek to make Barbados a better place. The same deal that we put in place for the disabled community with the commission and the legislation, we're going through the same exercise now with senior citizens. So I will simply say that we have a responsibility to look out for each other. And the vulnerable are the old, the vulnerable are the young, the vulnerable are the able-bodied who might not be of sound mind. So that we have to work out who it is that we should be looking out for in our communities. Yesterday, a story was brought to my attention with a teenage boy who was being the victim of effectively parental neglect and abuse. And we're down to this now. I have asked, for example, for the list of all of the persons who have been superannuated in the last few years, for us to get a tone, a sense of what has been happening, why it's been happening, and how we're going to get on top of it. Sante will tell you that we had sometime when she was Minister of Education, a session, I think, on violence in schools. It led to us taking a decision to significantly increase the number of social workers, guidance counselors, safety officers. Those numbers went from 12 to 40. So the government has been putting, same way that the number of judges went from two to eight in the criminal courts. The same way the number of prosecutors went from 7 or 8 to over 16 that they have now. And we recognize that there will be more that will be done and put in place, because it is clear that the police will also need help in being able to more expeditiously put together some of the more serious cases, particularly the firearm offenses. And rather than doing and waiting, the government will amplify the resources available to them to ensure that cases can be brought even quicker. Similarly, we brought a new bail act that recognizes that we don't only deal with the threat of risk of fleeing the jurisdiction, but if people are a threat to the public safety of others, that is a reason for bail to be revoked, not even to be denied. So that these powers have now to be genuinely used, because the government has strengthened the arsenal of the law enforcement entities to be able to do the things that they have to do. I say simply to those who feel that you're never doing something wrong until you get caught, take care they don't get caught fast, because the government will not be tolerating people abusing their offices or indeed engaging in activities and corrupt activity that will ultimately appear to be a small thing here, but when you see where it leads to gunplay and loss of life or death or intimidation or whatever. Okay?
One question from EPM. Given the increase in crime that we are seeing, there have been some complaints that persons who are charged with violent crimes or firearm charges in particular, who are reoffenders, are getting out on bail. And you just mentioned the Bail Act, but is there any consideration in really making that at least a little bit more tough as relates to firearm charges in particular?
Well, the legislative frameworks are very sound. The reality is that the courts have to do their job. And the reality is that across the entire Caribbean region, you have heard heads of government and other officials of the executive express concern, as have the police, that in many instances, actions are being taken as if we live in different societies and don't appreciate that these are some of the same people who are being put back on the street after the police have worked hard to bring them before the courts. I think that there has to be a sensitivity on the part of all of us that we have heavy weight to lift. I know that the heads of government have agreed that we will have a high-level discussion with the heads of the judiciary, because the fate and future of the Caribbean civilization is all of our concern, not just one group or another group. And that is why it gives us no pleasure. Barbados is not on that list, but it gives us no pleasure that 6 of the top 10 countries with high homicide per capita rates are from the Caribbean, and the rest from Central and Latin America. So that while the Americas is not a theater of military conflict, regrettably we are seeing the loss of life and the increase in anxiety and panic on the part of citizens purely because of the increase in criminal activity, much of it, but not all of it, driven by access to weapons that are deadly. Weapons that, I've said, don't walk and talk, but it is people who kill people. And we have to get beyond the weapons now and go to the core of it. And some of this, look, this has been a gradual decline, decade by decade by decade, with respect to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in terms of people's behavior and in terms of turning an eye to, oh man, give him a chance. It's a Kadir society. Oh, he just do that. Give him a chance. The French writer Voltaire says that sometimes you have to shoot a general to inspire the troops. And the truth is that what we have not done assiduously is to be able to hold a line of zero tolerance for certain types of behavior. When people steal gold, they gotta sell it somewhere. Who's buying it? Who's turning a blind eye and buying the gold? When a child brings home jewelry that you know as a parent you didn't give him and you can't afford to give him, who is turning the blind eye to say to the child, you cannot wear that piece of jewelry in here, as many of us heard grandparents tell us that they used to say in houses before. When a gun comes in the house and you button find it, who is saying not in here and telling you the police, this has to be taken to the police right now? If we don't do these things in the smallest and largest places across this country, we are all going to pay the price. And this is the reason, and I've said to my ministers as well, and I don't want no media there, that there needs to be some reasonings on the ground, because it's in these informal reasonings that people come to understand and appreciate that it cannot be business as usual. And what hurts me is that the very people whose lives are being put at risk more than ever is who? It's young, vibrant people who now should be looking to live a life and add value to their family and to the country. So, look, this you're going to hear me ad nauseum. You're going to say, you're repeating what you say sometimes, but that is the only way that you're going to change the needle in terms of cultural behavior. There are those, and the opposition has a perspective, that partying is responsible for everything. I don't agree, because people were partying. The Mighty Sparrow did not start singing calypso in 2010. People have been partying for decades. What we have to do is to tell people that there are limits and that there are certain things when you go overboard. Here the old people tell us what? Too far east is what? Too far east is west. So that the beauty of adulthood and the beauty of education is that we must all pray, I hope, to become discerning, to be able to know when to and when not to. And that's why going to Sunday school or to whatever religion you believe in, these are the things that are ingrained in us. I didn't now learn that I'm do unto others as you would have them do unto you. How old were you when you learned that, Crystal? About 4 or 5. That's the point. Now, can you go out there and find me 30 other 5-year-olds who are learning that today? Easily? If you can, then we're in good shape. If you can't, then we have things to fix. I don't know if the others want to speak. You don't want to say anything on the mental health issues? All right. Sante, you don't want to add to it? All right. So I'm asking Bajans, and I get your consternation. And let me just say for the record, and the AG knows my feeling, that when I came to this job, I know that I promised myself that I don't want any special favors. And therefore, I've said that my car will have and be subject to the same tint regulations as anybody. So I don't want any exemption for my car and my office as Prime Minister. And if outside hot, I can be hot with you. And if it ain't hot, I can be cool with you. But what I'm not going to do is ask Bajans to do something that I am not prepared to do myself. And I think you know me well enough to know that. That's why when it came to the honors, I said, no, I don't want it. Do it for future people. So let us agree, please, that yes, I would rather that you didn't have to go through that. But the truth is that we need the police to protect us. And we need them to be comfortable in protecting us. And then there are some instances where they need to be able to see inside the vehicle too, to make determinations and judgments about what else they have to do in terms of an investigation. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. Have a good day. All right.